Hi everyone, I'm here today to tell you about the third Study Guide 3 for Exam 3, that covers chapters 8 and 9 in our Power of Critical Thinking 8th edition. I have a few things to tell you, and then I want to remind you of a couple other things, just so you'll do your best work on the test. The first thing is make sure that you're checking your work on those first 2 pages. The matching, all those definitions come from the back of the book. Okay. Make sure that if you're unsure, especially when you were talking about quality, quantity, and quantitative, I think that's what I'm looking at. Oh, quantifier, qualifier, and quantity. Those guys are a little bit close in their definitions, and so make sure you're looking at the right one at the right time. The other thing is about the big words. Remember that you're supposed to use the back of the book, the glossary. For those, do not use Google or your dictionary or whatever, because as I've said from the beginning, what we are doing with the big words is looking at the vocabulary that is specific to critical thinking, to logic. And so some of those definitions are slightly different from what you would get from the dictionary, and that's okay. Every discipline has something like that. I can tell you 5 different definitions for argument, and depending upon where I'm working, they're right or they're wrong. So make sure that you're looking at those from the back of the book. I also would encourage you to go back to your previous test, which is exam 2, and look at the marking on your pages. I don't give a lot of like written out feedback for the exams, um, because I have found students don't usually look at it. But if you go back and look, you can see where I've put the little pink dots or lines or whatever. There's something wrong with this. Okay. Um, the only exception to that is the background information. Sometimes you get a little dot to remind me to give you the extra 2 points because you wrote out the whole thing as opposed to just the first sentence. So use the book for your definitions, whether that's in matching or um, the big words, and you'll be fine. The rest of the test, of course, is truth tables. We're going to do 3 of those. 2 that are, I give you the argument, it's already in the P's and Q's format, and 1 you have to figure out the P's and Q's. Remember that those are worth at least a point per box for the trues and falses. So, you know, at least, at the very least, do the PQR stuff and get those few points. And, you know, um, a note of encouragement. I know that the truth tables and the Venn diagrams are different, or they're not anything you've ever seen before. And so it does take a little bit longer for your brain to go, oh, that's what we're doing. So give it time to do that. You have to try. If you look at it and go, oh, that's too hard, what is wrong? Um, it's not hard. It is tedious, but it is done the same way every single time. Every time you have P and Q, it's going to look the same. Okay. Same thing with the Venn diagrams. Anytime you have all SRP, it's going to be that big portion is colored in, the A. The A statement, the E statement, the O statement, the I statement, they always, always, always look the same, regardless of how many bubbles you have or where you're figuring things out. Um, it works the same way all the time. And don't try to make it special or weird or do your own thing, because you understand this part. Okay, part of the deal here is you have to be able to do standard format, which means it's the same way all the time. Okay, so memorize, get that in your head, and kind of move on that one. If you didn't make the 3x5 cards, I would encourage you to at least bookmark the pages for those things so that you can go back and look at them when you're trying to figure things out on the test. Okay. And remember, you can use any of your resources as long as they're yours. Okay. Your book, your notes, your homework, your whatever. And so you'll have some practice there. You'll have some things to look at. You can also rewatch any portion of the videos for these chapters or the homework videos, okay? Do some practice. But the only way these things end up being easy um, or just boring is if you practice a little bit. So give yourself some time and actually do the practice, and you'll get better and better at this, I promise. Practice really does make perfect. Good practice really does make perfect. Okay, so on the study guide itself, you have kind of the same order that it's going to be on the exam, right? So you have your matching, you have your big words, and then you have the short answer stuff. Truth tables, Venn diagrams, square of opposition, and the categorical equivalence. And so we talked about truth tables, basically give it a shot. Venn diagrams, same deal. And then the square of opposition, you have two different ways you can do this. You can either draw the square, put the little A, E, I, O things on there, and then draw the lines from one to the other until you can show me that they are true, false, whatever. The other thing is, if you want to write it out, you can, as long as you're using the actual square of opposition rules. There are only three. Contradictories are those ones from the opposite corners. Contraries from A to E, and subcontraries from I to O. And they all have their own rules. Contradictories can never be the same. So if A is true, then O is false every single time. And with the contraries, the A to E, they can't both be true. You can't have all of something and none of something be the same thing. Okay. The others tend to be, if you start with A or E, you're going to get a definitive answer every time, true or false. If you start with I or O, unless all you're doing is going up, doing the contradictories, you're going to get something that is indeterminate, which means it could be true or it could be false. Depends upon the day, kind of thing. So keep those in mind. The other thing is the equivalencies. You have conversion. I's and E's are equivalent. You can write the A's and the O's. It's not that it's impossible, it's just not equivalent. Okay, so don't give me that, oh, this doesn't work because it's not equivalent. No. Write it out. Do the work or you lose points. Obversion, everybody's equivalent, even though they look kind of funny. And then the contraposition, the A's and O's are equivalent. Give yourself time, look at the book, do a card, do notes, whatever you got to do, but make sure that you're using those correctly and that you're making them correctly. Okay. Let's see what else is on here. Lots of things. Oh yes. Okay. So for the actual, there is a mini essay. Please follow the directions. Give me 2 paragraphs, and a paragraph is more than a sentence. Usually about 5 sentences per paragraph. It can be more than that. It can be slightly less than that. But if you give me 2 sentences, you're not going to get your full 20 points. Okay, you might get 4. The study guide 3A practice, this is at chapter 9's integrated questions. And you're going to do 4 of those. 13 and 15 are truth tables, and 17 and 19 are Venn diagrams. Okay, and 19 is a little bit of everything. It's kind of it really is a test. Do pay attention to that. Okay, all 3 of those statements are what we call singular statements. So look that up in chapter 9 and make sure you're doing it correctly. Okay. When I ask for translation, that's what I mean too. Fix it, put it in the right format in English, and then do the S's and P's and M's. Okay. Write things out. The other thing is on the 3B practice, make sure for number 1 that you are using either you're giving me the box again, or you're giving me the written out rules and you're using the correct rules. Remember, there are only 3: contradictories, contraries, and subcontraries, and that's pretty much it. I did look at a couple things on the test itself, and there are a lot of things you should already know. Like I said, you're going to do kind of one of each. Pay attention to that. If it asks you to use the square of opposition, use the square of opposition. If it asks you to draw two sets of Venn diagrams, then draw the two sets. And to that end, I have both types of exams this time. If you're going to hand draw or hand write things, please use the one that says for handwritten answers. If you're not going to hand draw stuff, you've figured out how to copy and paste, or you're going to whatever, don't use that one, because then you've got to mess with all those extra lines and stuff, which is why I give you two different kinds. So if you're just going to do electronic, you're going to type it up, you have it figured out as far as how to make Microsoft do things for you. Great, use that, the plain one, plain exam 3. If you are going to handwrite anything at all, then use the handwritten one. That way you have space. Okay. I don't think there's anything surprising or weird aside from its truth tables and Venn diagrams, and they're always a little surprising and weird. But this is a pretty straightforward test. It's slightly more points than the first two. This one is 349. I think the second one was 343, so it's close. Anyway, it's interesting. You'll have to see how it goes. And again, you can look at, work through, whatever, everything, and then turn it in, of course. For the study guide, remember, the only thing that you get homework points for, the 20 points for homework, is by doing the practice work at the end of the study guide. And you have two different ones, so I need to see two different ones. Make sure that you have the 3A practice and the 3B practice. I don't care if they're all in one page, just make sure you turn them in twice then. Okay. Y'all are kind of weird about that. Anyway, make sure that you're doing the actual homework, and anything else you do on the study guide, turn in and I'll give you extra credit, but do the practice work. That's what gets you the 20 points. Okay. I've said that every time, but I still have folks who are just doing the extra credit. So I give you the homework stuff because these are the hardest questions, the hardest types of questions on the test. And I want you to practice a little bit before you get in there and have to get graded on it. Okay. So do your 20-point stuff and then do your exercises. You'll be fine. Let me know if you have questions. I hope this helps. You know how to get a hold of me. You have my email.